Welcome to Digging into the Future. Today we've got Randy Brouckman, the CEO of EdgeConneX, back on Digging into the Future after 5 years. And I'll tell you, I watched his podcast from 5 years ago last night, and I'll tell you, a lot has changed in that 5 years. We were in the beginning of COVID, and now we're sort of in this new kind of expansion period. So welcome, Randy, and
thank you, Bill.
Glad to have you back on Digging into the Future.
Good to be here.
So talk to us about what's going on at EdgeConneX. How are you seeing the world right now? Obviously, you're at the crossroads of everything that's going on around the globe with AI and this rapid expansion that we're seeing. Tell us about what you're seeing through your lens.
Well, again, thank you for having me. You're right. When I also was reflecting on our discussion of 4 or 5 years ago. We were right. COVID was going to make people very aware of the importance of data centers. I massively underestimated just how big that impact was going to be. But that brings us to today and to your question. Look, from an EdgeConneX perspective, we've had an interesting set of waves of things that have gone on. We started by bringing content closer to the consumer in the early days of the edge. That led to being in the right place at the right time with the ability to design, build, and deliver location-sensitive data centers as the cloud wars took off. And we were well positioned for that. And we sit here today with AI with many of the same challenges. We have to deliver what the customer wants, when they want it, and where they need it. And depending on what the AI is, whether it's training or inference, or in many cases, cloud-enabled AI, or solutions that are AI, but I may want it for cloud, or I may want it for both, I think those are some of the interesting challenges. Obviously, the scale has changed, right? From kilowatts to megawatts, from megawatts to hundreds of megawatts, from hundreds of megawatts. There's plenty of us talking about gigawatt scale in certain campuses. There's not going to be thousands of those necessarily today, but the scale is really interesting. Of course, that raises the issue of financing.
Yes.
But that's probably a lot of panels that we're going to talk about on that.
Well, I think it's sort of interesting because you think about it. Your original data center strategies probably chased eyeballs in many ways, right? It was, and now data centers aren't going where eyeballs are going. They're going where they can build these massive models, right? So it's got to be interesting for you because you have to pivot a little bit in the market, right, to make sure that you're in the right places, and it is a different group of locations than it probably was for the early days of internet and cloud, right?
Yeah, certainly there are some applications today that are less location sensitive than the pure edge, for sure. Inference sort of falls in between. Cloud's a bit more location sensitive, clearly. Not necessarily eyeballs, but enterprises, right? So I think what we see today is interesting growth along a number of vectors. Obviously, big AI campuses you see emerging. We're playing in that game. We're seeing an awful lot of zonal AI deployments happening, very large scale. And quite frankly, a resurgence in the edge with some of the inference coming now. The definition of edge is not small when it comes to these inference deployments.
I mean, because it is one of the things. Like, I mean, your original edge nodes were sort of sub a megawatt, maybe half a megawatt, right?
Come on now, Bill, 2 to 4.
Okay, all right.
but yeah, they were not gigawatt scale or
just while we're on this topic, think about what do you think the edge looks like 2 years from now, and what is it going to go? Because the biggest challenge right now, I think, is also data centers that are going to water cooling, doing a lot of the stuff that's required with GPUs. That may be a lot harder to do when you go downstream to smaller data centers, right? To make those changes, right?
Yeah, certainly it'd be tough to own a bunch of telco data centers today and turn them into AI, right? That may be a bridge too far. Connectivity is still going to matter. We got sometimes better lucky than good, but when we started the edge, remember, we recognized let's stay wholesale and high density. Now, I didn't expect 200 kilowatts a rack or a megawatt a rack. I didn't have that much foresight in my vision. But we started with high density. So we were able to, if I look at last year and the year before, we were able to pick up a lot of the demand for that 40, 50, 60 kilowatt per rack stuff that hit with inference. But you asked what I think it's going to look like. I think you're going to see the edge of interest. Some of that will be defined as expansion of zonal cloud regions. Some of it will be good old-fashioned edge like we saw, but I think there's going to be a lot larger. I think a small edge site might be 20 to 50 megawatts. And it won't shock me to see 8 or 10 pockets of 100 megawatt type edge, that are latency, not sensitive, maybe not quite as sensitive as we've seen before. We talk about inference, but inference is agentics, it's enterprise serving, it's inference, it's all the rest of it. And I think that's where you're going to see those edge deployments coming.
Now, do you see them as sort of, because in the days of cloud and even the days of the internet, those edge centers were IX points in many ways, right? They became the de facto internet exchange points.
Private peering.
Yeah. Do you see that with AI too? Is there going to be an AI IX?
Yeah, kind of interesting, right? And will there be an Akamai of models where it caches them out? And
exactly.
Small model and caching. I mean, I can think of a whole bunch of ecosystem.
No, but you know what I'm saying?
opportunities
Because you
that
think
are
about
gonna be
it,
created
everywhere
here.
in the world right now, there is essentially an AX or an IX in every single location, right?
Yep. And most markets that,
Yeah, and is it going to be like that now?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think, first of all, I think the IXs will be utilized as you start to have a lot of the traffic. I think there'll be private IXs for lack of, like we have private peering for content today.
Yeah.
I think you'll see some private peering. I also think there's a whole set of infrastructure around caching and models and small models. I think there's just a lot of interesting opportunities coming in AI. We're still in the early days.
No, I know. It's
amazing. We're still in the early days.
So one of the big topics we're going to talk about is this new group called the NeoClouds, right?
Yeah.
It's and how do you see like their role going forward? I mean, do you see them as sort of the hyperscale replacement, or do you see them as sort of an augmentation, or how do you see their role?
Certainly, I don't think a replacement. Let me make that one clear out. I don't see them as a replacement. I think it's going to vary, right, depending on the NeoCloud and on the customer the NeoCloud is serving.
Yeah.
So I think in many cases they can be like the cloud, where it serves the peaking and bursting and additional demand and moving quick. I think to the degree it's more than just GPU or TPU as a service. They can, it'll be interesting to see what value they get. Can they morph and pivot to serving enterprises direct and all the rest of it?
Yeah.
To be determined. But I mentioned capital up front.
Yeah.
I do think, if you're a banker and you're sitting here with the ability to put your balance sheet to work with an investment grade and a non-investment grade, the investment grade is going to get there, and capital is not unlimited. So I think the NeoClouds have some interesting challenges to navigate. I think they're doing it in many cases, sometimes with credit wrappers, sometimes through pricing differences, but it's kind of a interesting and emerging space. We service some of them.
Yep.
There's some level of risk we can take and some we can't. I think they're going to be. I think not all of them are going to survive forever. Some may get acquired, some may merge. I think there'll be some of that happening over time. But if we fast forward 3, 4, 5 years and then even beyond, I do think you're going to see some of today's NeoClouds are going to be big players in the future. There's going to be big, possibly even investment grade, knock on wood, we get to investment grade NeoClouds survivors and winners in this game. Right? It wasn't that many years ago. There wasn't a Google. There wasn't a Meta.
No. If you think about it,
those have all appeared since you and I've been knowing each other.
They were they came out of sort of the bones of the internet in 2001, right? And you think about it, and there may be questions of whether these will create bones that the next generation of things can come
It's going to be the underpinnings of AI. They're going to have a role in it for sure.
Yeah, which I think one of the things is also, as I think about it, as you start thinking about what is the next, what happens to data center companies as we go through this evolution, right? Because GPUs are starting to, obviously they can actually be used for cloud as well. Right? Like
they will be.
They will be reused, and so that's the good part. The negative part is they seem to be changing like the cloud in the old days was a lot of servers that we could sit on for 7, 10 years. And I think you've gotten to this discussion about capital because I think the NeoCloud sits in the middle of that. But all of a sudden now we have servers that don't last as long, and we have, they're much more expensive. They're bigger bets. They're much larger. And I think, how does this play into the whole, obviously the data center strategy over the last few years was very much around long-term investment, very, very strong growth, and now you're going to have an asset sitting in it that doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
Right?
So, yeah. There's a lot to unpack here. So let me go through this.
Yeah, this is sort of this is the 202. We'll get to the 404, but I think this is
a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So you're correct. Data center assets are fundamentally 20, 30-year type assets. You'd argue land and power is a limited commodity, limited availability and scarce resource for many decades to come, potentially. The life of the chips, I think, is to be determined. I actually believe there's going to be a long tail on a lot of this. I think you'll have to get your return on capital in a short period of time, and you'll have a long tail. I'd remind everybody, this is not new to us. When I look at a cloud data center, over the course of a 15-year lease, there might be 3 or 4 technology refreshes that happen in there. And it isn't a snap flash refresh, it comes in over time. So it's not like we haven't seen this before. I think the AI, GPU, TPU, XPU, that may be interesting. It'll be, do I move customers through aging of the chips? Are there some customers that are just fine with the 200s or the 100s for a longer period of time? So the refresh cycles might be a more interesting dynamic there. That said, you're correct. The tech's changing, and it's changing quick. We're in the early days of CPUs when we saw that some of these major changes. In the GPUs, it's even more rapid. So I think the data center providers have to recognize that they need to the degree possible, divorce themselves from the tech that's being deployed today.
Yep.
And I'm not sure everybody's got that sorted yet, right? You think of the data center more as a backplane, an electric backplane and a cooling backplane that could be an air or a water.
Yep.
And by the way, water could be immersion, it could be water to the chip, it could be a whole bunch of things. Let's not use water, let's do more closed loop, please, as an industry. We'll talk about that later. Let's make sure we're putting more back in than we're taking out from a sustainability perspective. But I think you want to do is not be tied to one tech. And then let the refresh cycles happen, and then it's deploy a tech loop or don't deploy the tech loop. Bring in certain chiller with air or not. I mean, there's interesting ways you have to do that. In some ways, kind of think of the data center more as a backplane.
Yep.
And as an electrical backplane, and you're going to have different distribution technologies, and a cooling backplane, and you flex which way you want to go. So I think we have to just be prepared for that. The densities are going up till somebody comes up with some solutions where they can come down.
Yeah.
You've seen some recent announcements where one supplier is letting temperatures go higher, and another is, for some reason, driving the water temperatures much cooler.
Yeah.
That's got PUE implications. So I think that we're going to be in this rapidly changing tech cycle for a bit.
I think the thing I think the elephant in the room is that in the ecosystem, those GPUs are now a much more larger portion of the capital.
Oh, aren't they though?
Right. So that's what I think. Where they used to be, the chips were sort of 15 or 20% of the total supply that you're actually supplying to the end user. Now they're 40%.
Yeah.
And by the way, they might not be owned by the guy with the big balance sheet anymore. They may be owned by. So that's really, I think, the 404 course, which is.
So now, now let's get to the
play through
subtleties.
this?
Yes. So if we want to apply some simple math, right? If I put $1 into the physical data center, I probably need $4 or $5 into the compute and storage infrastructure that goes inside that physical infrastructure. And then you're right. Who owns it? We've added a new layer in here. Obviously, it works well when the big cloud providers, the tech giants are the owners of GPUs and CPUs and
which it has been for a long time, right?
Right. I mean, super competent staffs, huge balance sheets, credit reach that makes everybody feel comfortable. Now you introduce a perceived shorter life on a really expensive asset, so you got to monetize that in a 4 or 5 year timeline, and you've introduced new players in there. Sometimes it isn't the cloud guys that own the chips, it's the NeoCloud guys that own the chips, or others that are rolling it in. I actually think you're going to see new pockets of capital emerge to support that. I think you're going to see some interesting models that we haven't even begun to see, where you're bundling some services in or some financing in as part of it. I want to be careful of doing vendor financing. We've
Yeah.
been down that path, those of us who live,
Yeah.
right? Where it becomes, too much of a circular economy. But you're correct, that is going to be a challenge.
Well, and I think one of the other things, just to switch gears, because I don't want to get totally tied up in the chipsets, but I think the other thing that's is interesting is you have the old economy world of power, right? So you have electricity now that is changing, right? Power companies all of a sudden are having to look at how they actually do business in a very different way, right? Like, because now you've got these guys that are coming in that actually are very big customers, and how do they actually work with them? How do they actually project out into the future? Many of them were government-controlled entities, which would,
Brings its own challenges.
Yeah, 5, 10 years. Yeah, we'll put a power plant together.
Right.
And now they're looking at, I've got to add origination of power by 40% in 2 years or something. And so, how you that's going to be the next thing to manage, right? Is do you become a power source, right, yourself, to make sure that you can augment that problem, or do we have to get better power companies? What do we lobby? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, again, you keep asking these questions that are layers deep to unpack. So let's start with the facts, right? We've got a power industry that has 4 decades of low or no growth, right? And all of a sudden, welcome to the hyperscale world of hyper growth and the consumption world that we live in. Really, timed at the same time as we're electrifying everything, right? On a global scale, not just the United States, but the United States has particularly got some crazy challenges, just given the demand that's here in the US around AI. So what are you gonna do, right? The supply chain's not ready. I'm not even sure the management understands it.
Yeah.
The companies themselves aren't geared up for growth and rapid movements. And quite frankly, as an industry, as a data center industry, right now, what we can't do is raise grandma's electric bill. We can't be the reason it raises. The fact of the matter is, in many cases, we're not. The reality is the underinvestment for the last 3 or 4 decades has caused some of that to occur. So what are we gonna do? So I think it's no one thing, there's no silver bullet here. Number one, I think as an industry, we need to pay the costs, what are truly our responsibility to add power, in. Number two, I think in many cases, we're going to have to bring power to the data center, right? That will be bringing on-site generation assets. It may be having us build where there's a combination of renewable and batteries, and we'll add some base load capabilities, and ultimately give the utilities time to bring large load interconnect to those sites, and then we'll put it on the grid, right? It'll be added into the grid. The utilities aren't going to move as quick as the industry needs, so the industry is going to have to help the utilities along. So I think you're going to see bringing behind the meter, you're going to see us investing in front of the meter, you're going to see us making some transmission and distribution upgrades where necessary. If there's not enough generation, then we should add generation. I hope when I look 10 years out that a lot of the, certainly 15, but hopefully in the 10 range, that a lot of the supplementing we're going to do can ultimately become assets on the grid. But power is the problem today.
Yeah.
Like period, full stop, right? We'll talk supply chain and labor, and there are some public perception issues that as an industry we have to manage and so on. But the reality is data centers and what they do for the society are actually more good than bad. We haven't done a great job of conveying that. Blah, 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 power's a problem. Now I think as an industry, we're gonna have to help fix that power problem. That doesn't mean pay for everybody's past mistakes, but we have to pay our fair share and make sure we're not making our grandparents' bills pay it, right? So.
But I think it's also there's some philosophical things like nuclear power and some of these other things that you have.
Couldn't happen fast enough, but it won't happen fast enough.
Right.
Right. It's clearly a whole bunch of places around the world we can make good or bad arguments around what the nuclear policies were. SMR is a technology we've understood for a long time. We got to get moving on it. Nuclear itself, we probably didn't appreciate the importance of what nuclear power can do. for the climate, for the economy, for society, but it isn't going to move quickly. Talk about skills that no longer exist in certain places of the world.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since this country's built on time, on budget nuclear power plants.
Oh, exactly.
Much less at scale. Now there are other countries doing a better job. But yeah, wow, there's just, like, we could spend hours, Bill, talking about what's happened in power, and I'm not probably even the right guy to do it.
So one other market let's talk about, and I would say it now in hindsight looks like one of the smartest plays ever, which was when you combined with a power company in India to build data centers, right? Like when nobody cared about power, but it happened to be the Andanis were the dominant player in the power space. Looks like a brilliant move now in hindsight, which is good for you. But how's that going, and how does it work? Is it actually as good as it looks on paper in terms of having the power company and the data center guys on the same roof?
Yes, and yes again. So it's a power first strategy. We actually took that, and by the way, I'm going to actually take a little bit of credit here. I'm going to give my team some credit. It was with foresight that we saw this one coming, not just hindsight.
But I'm saying not everyone in the industry saw it, and there were other
Right.
Your competitors came and walked away from that team, right, and didn't see it the same way, right? So
and you have to manage it. It's look, it's like any JV. It requires, you have to be willing to commit the cycles, the people, and the time to manage it. But that one's working particularly well. You're correct, Adani, our partner over there, is biggest private owner of transmission lines, power generation, renewable, and base load, et cetera, right? So it allows us to be a power first strategy. When you can build the substations and you can deliver the power and control that destiny, you don't have some of the problems we were talking about earlier. I'll actually take it a step further. EQT, I'm not sure I've mentioned this yet, but EQT is the largest shareholder and owner of EdgeConneX. EQT has a heck of a portfolio of renewable wind, solar, other power assets, battery, some base load capabilities as well. We've actually now pulled together those portfolio companies and EdgeConneX and now have a single offering to the marketplace where we can lead with power again. Data center capacity with power. So we took the lessons we've learned and have recognized that we can do this beyond just India. We have the ability to do this in parts of the United States, parts of Europe as well. So it made so much sense, we did it ourselves where we could. I'm not a power company, but I've been able to bring that power, those power assets to the game.
No, it's a unique position that you're in. I mean, and maybe that's, who knows, maybe that's the future for many of these companies.
We believe it is.
Yeah.
We believe it is. The ability to have front of the meter, behind the meter, renewable, base load, battery, all, and storage, doesn't have to be battery, storage brought together. And EQT thinking of this as one solution, one contract, one interface to the customer so that they're not chasing around 4 or 5 ways has been a big differentiator. We learned that from our India.
It's fascinating. I think it's a great testament to your team and a great effort that you guys have put that together. Unfortunately, I think we can talk. Randy and I could probably talk for 3 hours, to be honest with you. And we barely unpacked some of these topics. But thanks again for joining us here on Digging into the Future, and looking forward to seeing you around the region and in the U.S. And thank you for joining us here.
Bill, thank you, and thank you for all the coaching you've given me along the way. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.